Am I the jerk for inviting my nephew to my wedding despite his estrangement from my brother? I am a 33-year-old male and am marrying my fiancé, a 37-year-old male, this winter. We're putting together the guest list to send the invitations out and have run into an issue over my nephew and my brother. My brother, a 38-year-old male, was 18 when his girlfriend told him she was pregnant. They ended up moving in together, and my brother decided to find work as a mechanic rather than go to college as he'd planned. My nephew was born a little while later. They got married when she told him she was pregnant with their second child, a 15-year-old female, and then had two more, both 10-year-old males. Ever since my nephew was born, he's been one of my favorite people. I babysat him plenty of times, same with my other nieces and nephews, and have spent my 20s as their fun uncle. My brother and I were close as kids, and I've been close with his kids as well. 5 years ago, my brother found out my nephew wasn't his, and his now ex-wife had been sleeping with someone else at the time, and had suspected my oldest nephew wasn't my brother's since he was a little kid. They ended up getting a divorce, and my brother didn't seek custody of my oldest nephew and said he didn't want to see him. He told me that he needed time to process and would try to patch things up later. That idea was kind of ruined when my nephew turned up at my brother's apartment begging to talk. It turned into an argument between them. During the argument, my nephew said something along the lines of, "No wonder mom was with somebody else. I bet grandpa hated you." My brother cut things off then and there and has refused to see my nephew since. I stepped in as the main male figure in my nephew's life, much as I dislike my ex-sister-in-law. I even took him out for his 18th birthday and took him looking at universities, and he now goes to my alma mater. I asked my brother how he wants to handle the seating situation if they don't want to be close together. My brother was angry I'd even invite my nephew after everything that happened. He said it'd be like inviting my ex-sister-in-law. He's not family, he's just the person who disrespected our dad. I said is being petty and childish, taking the words of a scared and angry 14-year-old so personally. He was a kid who said something hurtful because his entire world was falling apart, and the person he'd relied on for his whole life was suddenly pulling away. Instead of being understanding and doing family therapy or something like a grown-up, my brother decided to give adult weight to a teenager's words and cut him off completely. My nephew has said he's okay with not going if it's causing an issue, but I told him not to be ridiculous. He's important to me, and I want him there for when I marry my person. I told him he shouldn't let my brother's inability to let go be his problem. My fiancé agrees with me. My mom and sister both say I need to see it from my brother's perspective. I think he's just being petty. Am I the asshole? You acted correctly, by a mile. Your nephew is clearly an important part of your life, and you've stepped up to be there for him when his world fell apart. Excluding him from your wedding to placate your brother's grudge would only add to the pain and rejection he's already experienced. Your support likely means the world to him, and it's crucial for him to know he's still loved and valued. Am I the jerk for calling out my brother-in-law for staring at my chest and my daughter's chest? My brother-in-law, let's call him Dan, visits my husband, his brother, and me occasionally about every 2 to 3 months. Every time we see him, Dan talks to me while staring at my chest. I am in my mid-50s, decent looking but nothing to stare at. On the rare occasion my daughter joins us for the family visit, Dan stares at her chest too. She is 23 years old. The last time he visited our home, I made a motion with my fingers from my chest up to my eyes. Your basic, "my eyes are up here" gesture. He did not acknowledge this and kept staring. I grabbed a sofa cushion and hugged it against my chest for the remainder of the evening. For reference, I was not exposing my décolletage in any way and was wearing a hoodie. I expressed my offense and frustration to my husband, let's call him Jerry. Jerry was upset and did not realize this was going on repeatedly and said he would have words with Dan. Dan has heart issues and is in his mid-60s, so it's difficult to find a time to talk about sensitive subjects as we are all afraid to upset him. Finally, Jerry, my husband, called his brother and told him how upset he was and how disrespectful it was towards me that he would stare at my chest. Dan blew up at my husband and denied it. He called me a liar and asked how I could say this happened. He told Jerry to take control of your wife and household and be a man and don't allow this to happen. Jerry hung up on him. 2 weeks later, Dan called Jerry again to berate him for not being a man and to tell him again that I am a liar. Dan proceeded to tell their sister, let's call her Debbie, his side of the situation. She then took Dan's side. Debbie called Jerry, telling him what a liar I am and how I'm trying to drive a wedge in the family. We are all in our 50s and 60s. Isn't this immature? Dan has a history of disrespecting women openly and blatantly. My husband has mentioned this many times, and it is also quite obvious by his attitude in conversation. My sister-in-law Debbie won't speak to me or respond to my text or email messages. We used to have a nice friendship. We are the only relatives close enough to respond if Dan has another medical event. He has alienated many other friends and neighbors. Am I the asshole for having called out Dan for disrespecting me and my daughter? He has alienated me, my kids, and Jerry. I could have honestly guessed he would do this, but I was just so fed up with him doing this to us in my own home. You've done nothing wrong. Dan's reaction shows he's upset about being caught and called out for his inappropriate behavior. It seems like everyone is tiptoeing around him because he has heart issues and a temper, but that doesn't excuse his actions. Tell him loudly to stop staring at your chest and don't let him bug you. Am I the jerk for essentially giving up watching my friend's kids? Over a month ago, my friend Laura, a 33-year-old female, asked me, a 24-year-old female, to watch her children for 2 weeks while she handled a court case several states away. At the time, the children were staying with their father for the month of July. When Laura asked me to do this favor for her, she explained that the children, a 13-year-old male and a 13-year-old female, not twins, knew what needed to be done around the house and that I would just be observing them, mostly. I agreed because they only live about 30 minutes away, and I was under the impression I would still be able to go to work and do most things normally. However, when the children returned from their fathers, they, along with their father, were essentially missing and staying across town from where they said they would be. The police had to be called in order for Laura to get the children back. Then, the boy told the police he was going to run away as soon as they were back with their mother on the grounds that Laura was abusive. As a result, a DCFS case was opened but quickly closed after an inspection of Laura's home because she had nothing to hide. Fast forward to the week before I was supposed to watch the children. Laura filled me in on everything that happened and warned me that the children might be a flight risk. She said she did not trust them to be alone for any amount of time. As a result, she told me I would have to leave work 2 hours early every day so that I could be home when they returned from school. This was not ideal because it was peak season at work, but I managed to arrange my schedule to leave an hour early from work. The children whined and fought with me whenever asked to do anything. They resisted chores, getting them to shower and other tasks. They also tried to fake being sick to get out of going to school and constantly fought with each other. I had never been so stressed in my life. It was hard to pick my battles when it was never ending. I admit the house was a mess when the 2 weeks were over. I got so tired of constantly fighting the children that I pretty much gave up. Laura's court case was dismissed, and she was free to go after the first week, but she had a non-refundable, non-transferable flight, so she stayed the rest of her time with her new boyfriend. I offered to pay for a return flight home because I was genuinely losing my mind. Laura called me when she returned home, and she was upset about the state of the house, saying it looked like the children had not picked up after themselves the whole 2 weeks. I apologized and said that I tried to pick my battles, but I guess I did not pick enough of them. Then she got really upset and said she wanted to understand how the children were so bad that I wanted to quit because they had never acted like this for a babysitter before. I am not sure if she was upset at me or frustrated with the children, but it felt like I was the one getting chewed out. The whole reason I agreed to do this for Laura was because she is new to the area and has no one else to impose upon in this way. Your actions were justified. Your so-called friend refused your generous offer to pay for her ticket home, treating herself to a child-free vacation at the cost of your sanity. She then had the nerve to complain about the state of her home upon her return. This person is taking advantage of your kindness and doesn't deserve any more favors. Cut your losses and get far away from her, OP. Am I the jerk for telling my parents to forget the Hallmark movies and move into the real world? My parents have been pressuring my wife for a while now to reach out to her older half-siblings to establish a relationship. My wife, who is 27 years old, was an affair baby. Her half-siblings share the same mother as her, but are aware of her status as the child from the affair. She was 7 years old the last time she saw them, but she remembers very clearly that they did not like her or accept her. She knows this has not changed because they maintain contact with extended family while also not attending anything she might be attending. My wife's parents were married, but it became a toxic marriage based on cheating, and she has no contact with them as a result. My wife is pregnant with our first child, and this trouble with my parents started when my wife admitted to wishing things could have been different for her and her siblings. My parents told her she should reach out because she never knows how they would respond. She told them she did know because they continued to keep their distance and not be around her. She accepted it and would not push or risk a very vitriol-filled rejection from them. However, she appreciated that my parents wanted the best for her. My parents told her she should not be so quick to dismiss the idea. They have brought it up roughly a dozen times since. I have told them to stop and reminded them that this is my wife's decision alone, and she should not be backed into a corner by them. The last time was Friday night. My wife grew frustrated by the mention again, and I told my wife we should leave because clearly this was not the right place for us to be at that moment. My parents said we did not need to leave, and they were trying to support my wife. I told them to forget the Hallmark movies and come into the real world, where not everyone is desperately waiting to be reunited with family. People can hold on to resentment and hate for decades and lifetimes. People refusing to attend an event that another person might be at should be taken at face value and seen as a boundary instead of being treated like a cry for the other person to reach out. I told them it is not destined for a happily ever after when you ignore clear signs and reach out anyway. My parents are huge Hallmark fans. My parents sent me 3 texts right after we left, saying I should have kept my sarcasm away from people who only want to help and support my pregnant wife. We have decided a break is needed from my parents, but their texts about my comment to them have left me wondering. Am I the bad person? You haven't done anything wrong. Pushing a point when someone has already said no is not supportive. It's curious that people who only want to help and support my pregnant wife are so keen to push her into a relationship with people who have never helped, supported, or loved her in her life. Maybe if they listened the first however many times they brought it up, the sarcasm wouldn't have been necessary. Really, your parents should just butt out. Am I the jerk for how I told my family that I have cancer? I, a 24-year-old female, discovered a couple of weeks ago that I have breast cancer. It came as a real shock to me because I had practically no symptoms. I was at the hospital for a different reason and was referred internally to the mammography suite. The good news is that doctors were able to catch it early and the outlook is good. My problem, aside from the obvious, is that I had no idea how to tell my family. I knew they would panic regardless, which is understandable as I lost 2 great aunts to breast cancer, and my dad also has stomach cancer. So I just kind of avoided telling them because there is a lot going on in my family at the moment. I did not want to put any more on their plate. But then I did my first round of chemotherapy and it floored me. I knew then that I had to tell them because I genuinely could not go through that alone again. This is where I might be the wrongdoer. My family is really bad with emotional stuff. We are not good at expressing ourselves. We can laugh and make jokes, but when it comes to serious matters, we are all quite awkward. I knew that this was going to be awkward and I did not really want to face that. I could deal with my mom because she is a lot better with stuff like this, but I really did not want to tell my dad. He is the suffer in silence type and I knew it would break him to learn about this, especially since he is going through the same thing. So, to tell them, I bought a cake and a card to give my dad. The card said, "Congratulations, it's twins," with the diagnosis, outreach letter from my general practitioner. Reactions were mixed. My dad, while really upset, did find it funny. My mom is distraught and did not. My siblings are split. Some found it funny, some found it insensitive to my parents. Personally, I thought it was funny, but they did raise some good points. In the end though, it is mostly forgotten as they are all still in shock and focused on the diagnosis itself. It has been a couple of days and I am starting to think that maybe it was wrong of me to do it like that. I could have just gotten over my awkwardness and had a mature conversation with my parents about it, but it is too late for that now. Am I the wrongdoer? No one gets to tell you how to cope with your diagnosis. What you did wasn't cruel. It was done from a place of authenticity. It's understandable if your family found it awkward and difficult to receive this information, but it's nothing you didn't experience yourself. If they truly love you, they will ultimately see the pain and challenge you were facing alone and extend some grace. Am I the jerk for asking my spouse to spend all their savings? I am a 34-year-old male married to the love of my life, a 33-year-old female. My wife is kind, nurturing, and motivated in her career. She does a lot for me at home since I work long hours. We married 4 months ago and dated for 8 years. We are both easygoing and have the same sense of humor, and we rarely argue. I make 4 times more money. I am in healthcare, but she makes a good salary as well. Since I make 4 times what she does, I tend to pay for most things, which I absolutely do not mind. With bigger purchases, we pay for things together in proportion to what we make. She is usually okay with paying her share of things and will sometimes offer to pay for dinners and dates. She is very close with her best friends. She has 4. They are great people, but they are basically attached to the hip and talk daily in a group chat. Her and her 4 friends have a combined savings account together for investing in something together. They have each been putting in a few $100s per month each. I have known about this for years and did not love the idea initially, which I expressed. But she was adamant she wanted this, and at the time, we were not hurting for the money. It was ultimately her money and her decision. We are now looking to buy a home in one of the most expensive real estate markets in the United States. She expresses that she does not have much in her own savings but has $20,000 of her own money tied in with her friends' combined savings. Over the last year, they have been told by 2 financial advisors that 5 people attempting to invest together in real estate, stocks, or a business was not a great idea. They also recommended splitting the funds into 5 separate accounts since the account is under one of the friends' names, and there are tax implications for having that amount of money in her name, $100,000. The homes we are looking at need around $60,000 to $70,000 for a down payment. I stated I was willing to spend nearly all my savings for the down payment for a home, $50,000, so I told her she should pull that money from her joint friends account to help with the down payment. It is a huge purchase, and I do not think it should be my burden alone. She got really upset and told me I do not want to touch that money. I promised my friends it would be for investing together. We should look for a less expensive home then, maybe a fixer-upper. She then stated it would be easier for you to accrue the money back since you make so much more. This was very frustrating, and I told her it is unfair I have to spend nearly all my savings, and she does not. Her friend fund is not wise, and it is not wise not to use that money for our future home. Am I the antagonist for asking her to use her own cash from her friend's account and break that promise to her friends so we can buy a nice home together? You behaved properly. It's absurd that she and her friends have a shared savings account just sitting there instead of helping with the down payment on a shared house. 2 financial planners have already said that splitting it up is a better idea, so calling the fund stupid seems justified. It looks like she cares more about planning a future with her friends than with her own husband. Plus, never wipe out all savings for a down payment, especially when buying a house, because unexpected expenses always crop up. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.